Hello everyone and welcome back to the 5th season of Dungeons & Death Battles as we continue on our journey to find the most lethal monster in all of Dungeons & Dragons. In this season, as with those that have come before it, 16 deadly dungeon denizens will be facing off against each other until we find the most barbaric of the bunch. This, of course, being the CR5 season. The rules of the arena are simple. Combatants start 30 feet apart. There is no fleeing the arena, no outside influences allowed, and victory is achieved by kill only. Due to some very specific shenanigans last season, the kobold mob that runs the arena have seen it fit to install a 150-foot high ceiling, and have ruled that any creature leaving the arena via any means of teleportation, astral trickery, or the like must return to the material plane within one turn or be disqualified, and likely consumed by the arena arbiters. We don't know exactly what they are, but they sound absolutely terrifying, so best obey the rules. And today, the quarterfinals continue, with tonight's bout promising to be one of pure unrestrained chaos. In one corner we have a creature straight from the abyss, a demon of muscle, madness and mayhem, while in the other strides a walking mountain of prehistoric power. Yes, indeed, it is of course the Barlgura versus the Brontosaurus. In the pits it does appear that the handlers are having a tough time with today's combatants, with the Barlgura having already crushed 3 of its own support imps out of pure boredom, all while the Brontosaurus manages to remain calm for now. Several wagons have harvested primordial greenery, keeping the creature calm and content until the time for battle arrives. And while everything is being sorted out behind the scenes, that does mean that we have time to jump into a combatant analysis. And now, of course, we will be familiar with these creatures, but we will be kicking off with the blue corner and the Barlgura, a foul creature spawned from the depths of the abyss. This ape-like terror is a whirlwind of rage and feral cunning, as it has proved in previous combats. This fiend leaps into the arena with a hit point average of 85 and an AC of 15. It backs this with sturdy, more physically focused stat spread, with 18 in strength and 16 in constitution being highlights. As we have come to know, the Barlgura is a menace and can harness a slew of defenses, such as resistances to cold, fire and lightning damage, with immunities to poison damage and the poison condition, all while dishing out punishing damage with a multi-attack that allows the monster to unleash its tormenting bite, which hits with a +7 and deals 2d6 plus 4 points of piercing damage, plus 2d12 points of psychic damage on a strike, as well as being able to throw in with 2 thrash attacks per round, also hitting on a 7-up and dealing 1d10 plus 4 points of bludgeoning damage, as well as inflicting the prone condition on a large or smaller creature. This demon can also utilize innate spellcasting, with invisibility, entangle and phantasmal killer being some of the more potent options. The Barlgura can also leap 40 feet in a single bound using its bonus action leap ability, but that is nothing compared to the distance it'll go to tear a creature limb from limb. Wild, violent and prone to fits of gleeful destruction, the Barlgura embodies chaos itself and is clearly delighted to have been given something so very large to punch, which does of course lead us on to the red corner, here with which the ground is trembling. And surprise, surprise, that is not today's crowd. That is in fact the Brontosaurus making its return to the arena, a titan from a once thought lost age. Its every step sends shockwaves through the stands. It doesn't roar, it does not rage, it simply exists, and that is usually more than enough to flatten anything within 20 feet. So of course the Brontosaurus, as before, strides into the arena with a huge 121 hit point average and pairs with the Barlgura for a 15 AC. The Brontosaurus is a bulwark that swats and smashes its foes into submission with its stomp attack, hitting with an 8-up modifier and dealing 5d8 plus 5 points of bludgeoning damage on a hit, or swiping enemies with its whip-like tail, which also hits on an 8-up and deals 68 plus 5 points of bludgeoning damage on a connection. As mentioned, the Brontosaurus's gargantuan size helps it to keep achieving a reach of 20 feet, making it a very difficult opponent to run from or avoid its wrath in general. With a neck like a siege tower and a tail that could clear a village square, the Brontosaurus brings one strategy and one strategy only: be so massive that nature itself gives up on trying to stop you. And now, with all that noted, it does appear that things have settled down backstage and that the combatants are ready to brawl. And so with our arena clerics on standby, Our kobold stewards have wisely chosen to climb the rafters in today's battle in order to avoid waving the starting flag from the sands of the arena. And with that, roars of excitement bellow forth from the crowd here in today's arena as the Barlgura beats its chest, howling a challenge that echoes off the stone walls that surround us here. The giant Brontosaurus lowers its massive head, its shadow swallowing the demon whole, as it does look like it is time to roll for initiative as demonic muscle meets ancient mountain, and the chaos of the abyss collides with the crushing inevitability of nature itself. And so we will be kicking things off right here in the quarterfinal bout, rolling in for initiative for the Barlgura with its +2 modifier. Of course, we'll be looking to roll in as high as possible to get the step over on the Brontosaurus. And the Barlgura has rolled in with a tremendous natural 20 to start right here. What a way to kick off this quarterfinal bout. The Brontosaurus is going to be completely unable to defeat that, as even if it does roll in with its very own natural 20, that -1 modifier will bring it down to a 19, and the Barlgura, with that immediate roll, has cemented itself in the pole position right here, and as such we will be kicking things off straight away, as the Brontosaurus will find it impossible to take pole position from the Barlgura after that roll. It does of course mean that first things first, the Barlgura is going to initiate using one of its most powerful spells, and it is going to drop in a use of Phantasmal Killer at 6th level. This will force the Brontosaurus to make a DC 13 wisdom saving throw or fall under the effect of the illusion spell. And now if the Brontosaurus does fail this, it will be subject to 6d10 points of psychic damage and will have disadvantage on ability checks and attack rolls for the duration of the spell. Also, while the spell maintains its hold over the Brontosaurus' psyche, the target must make a wisdom saving throw at the end of each of its turns. On a failed save, it takes that psychic damage again, although on a successful save, the spell does break. And so with that, Brontosaurus is going to be making a crucial first roll here. Does not have a modifier for its wisdom, so it will be rolling this in flat, as the Barlgura does look to inflict some early trickery upon its foe. So Brontosaurus rolling in DC 13, no modifier, and that is a 19 nonetheless, which does mean that with no modifier, that is still going to massively exceed that save DC, which does mean the Brontosaurus is going to be safe from that Phantasmal Killer and those disabling effects that it brings with it. Although all that being said, the creature is still going to be subject to half of 6d10 points of psychic damage. So rolling in 6d10 points of psychic damage, which will be halved and rounded down thanks to that Brontosaurus' successful save. And it is probably a good thing that it saved that too, as that is not a bad roll there from the Barlgura, with an 8 and a 3 for 11, plus 6 and 2 for 19, topped up by the additional 2 there for 21, and capped by that 9 to make for 30 points of damage, which will of course be halved down to 15 points of psychic damage, as the Barlgura is able to drop the Brontosaurus from 121 to 106 hit points. Although with that, the Barlgura is going to be visibly disappointed. It clearly knows that this foe is going to be a great challenge in melee combat. Without the benefit of that Phantasmal Killer, it is going to have a much harder time in dealing with it. And so in order to buy itself some time, the Barlgura is going to use 10 feet of its movement to utilize its bonus action leap, which it is going to utilize to leap up on top of the arena cages, and will then use the rest of its 30 feet of movement to crawl and climb as far away from the Brontosaurus' position as possible. And with that, we are going to hand over to the dinosaur, which is going to bellow, its brain feeling racked with psychic pain, and it is going to barge towards the Barlgura's position, getting as close as possible with its 30 feet of movement, which does bring it right up to the edge of the arena walls. The Brontosaurus now staring the crowd in the face as it looks to seek out the Barlgura, creature that it now definitely wants to remove from the battlefield. But with that, it will be unable to do anything further, although it is likely to hold an action to attack just in case the Barlgura does for some reason get back within melee range. And with that, we will hand back over to the Barlgura. A rather more clandestine start to this combat today. Subtle tactics being utilized by the demon, its wisdom of 14 granting it a level of street smarts that will allow it to think like this. Demons are characteristically avoidant of combat with creatures that are bigger and more powerful than themselves, seeking of course to utilize subterfuge in its place. Although as Phantasmal Killer is only 1 cast per day for the Barlgura, it is now going to be completely reliant on its melee prowess in order to win the day, which does of course mean that it is going to have to get in close with the Brontosaurus, and step 1 of its plan is going to be to use one of its 2 per day castings of invisibility, which does mean that the Barlgura fades from the Brontosaurus' vision and is for now going to remain somewhere in the area. As we do hand over to the Brontosaurus, a around with much more preparation than usual. Seems to be frustrating the dinosaur as it whines and bellows as it looks to seek out its adversary. Unfortunately, unable to find it, as once again the Brontosaurus will be holding an action to attack just in case the Barlgura should reveal itself prematurely. But with that, we will hand over once again to the demon, which now seeks to utilize the second part of its plan, and it knows that it has only one option, and that is, of course, to get into close combat with the Brontosaurus, and that is exactly what it's going to do, as it utilizes 30 feet of its speed to move back down towards the arena. Its climb speed coming in clutch to provide easy maneuvering, and then, of course, it will activate its bonus action leap, launching itself a further 40 feet towards the arena, where it will make landfall. And as it is invisible, the Brontosaurus will be unable to use its reaction, as in order to take it, the creature that it is targeting must be visible, which does mean that before it is able to get off its reaction attack, the Barlgura is going to be able to break invisibility and inflict a tormenting bite. The bite itself, of course, being the catalyst that breaks the spell, meaning that while the attack was in motion, Barlgura was still invisible, which does mean that it will gain the benefit of an advantage attack against the Brontosaurus. And so we will be rolling that in first. Tormenting bite right here from the Barlgura at advantage thanks to that invisibility. And so rolling in right here, let's see if it can do it. +7 to hit. Look at the Brontosaurus' AC of 15. And with an 18 +7 for 25, that is an easy hit for sure, as the Barlgura's crunching teeth break through the Brontosaurus' hide. Absolutely no issues for the ape-like demon here. And now it will get the pleasure of rolling in 2d6 +4 points of piercing damage plus 2d12 points of psychic damage. So let's see what it can do here. And that is a pretty pitiful roll there, only saved by that maximum roll on the d12, with those two ones coming together for 2, of course, adding in that extra 2 there for 4, plus that 12 for 16 points of damage, and then topped up by the 4-point modifier to make for 20 points of damage total. That was very nearly an abysmal failure there from the Barlgura, but it was saved by that max roll on the d12, which does mean that it will be bringing the Brontosaurus down from 106 to 86 hit points after that initial attack. And now the Fiend is going to continue on, as it does have 2 more thrash attacks, although these will be rolling in flat, as the invisible condition only affects the first attack it makes. And so rolling in first of 2 attacks right here. Barlgura looking to roll into Thrash. Once again, a +7 to this, looking to beat the dinosaur's AC of 15. And an 8 +7 is going to be bang on the money, as it does roll in with a 15 total. And as we all know, meets it, beats it. So the Barlgura will be rolling in 1d10 +4 points of bludgeoning damage. Although due to the Brontosaurus and its gargantuan size, it will be completely immune to the secondary effect that would usually knock a large or smaller creature prone. So 1d10 +4 points of bludgeoning damage. And that is a 4 +4 for another 8 points of damage there from the Barlgura, as it drops the Brontosaurus down to 78 hit points. But it does, of course, have 1 more of these. Its multi-attack allowing it to make 1 tormenting bite attack and 2 thrash attacks per round. And that is another critical hit there from the Barlgura. This demon does not want to let the Brontosaurus get out of the arena alive, rolling in with its second natural 20 of this combat, albeit this time on an attack. Therefore, it will be dealing 2d10 +4 points of bludgeoning damage to its adversary. The Barlgura is really going hard in this battle. Let's see just how much damage it can do with that critically targeted strike. And that is so much better from the demon, with an 8 and a 10 on those dice to make for 18 points of damage. Of course, topped up by that +4 modifier to make for 22 total. That is a climactic strike right there from the Barlgura, as its claws rend through the Brontosaurus' scaled hide, dropping it from 78 to 56 hit points after that huge critical connection. The Barlgura's setup does seem to have paid off for it right here. However, before we hand over to the Brontosaurus, the creature did hold an action to strike at the Barlgura when it first revealed itself, and therefore it will be using its reaction to make the most of that attack, which does mean that the Brontosaurus is now able to make a tail attack against the Barlgura, which is now standing within close proximity. And now the Brontosaurus does have a +8 to hit right here, as it looks to beat that Barlgura's matching AC of 15. So rolling in, Brontosaurus with its reaction tail attack, but a 4 +8 for 12 is not going to do it, as the Barlgura simply sidesteps away from the creature, its slow movements being seemingly predictable predictable to the demon, which is well versed in the art of combat. But after that disappointing move from the Brontosaurus, we will be handing over to its full turn, unto which it will be once again swinging in with that tail. A second swipe coming back towards the Barlgura. Will it be lucky a second time? With an 11 plus 8 for 19, that second strike is going to connect. As the first strike whiffs over the top, the Barlgura seems to be content in the fact that that attack has missed it, but becomes quickly complacent and does not realize that that whip-like tail is coming back on it once again, and that second wave connects hard as the Barlgura is about to be lashed for 68 plus 5 points of bludgeoning damage. So rolling in. And a pretty decent hit right there from the Brontosaurus as well, with 5 and 3 for 8, plus 6 for 14, plus 5 and another 6 for 25, topped up by that final 4 there to make for 29 points of damage, as we then add the 5-point modifier to make for 34 points of damage total, as that whip-like cannon of a tail flails through the air, making contact as it drops the Barlgura from 85 to 51 hit points after that initial bombardment. What an incredible strike there from the Brontosaurus, as it nearly halves the Barlgura's hit points in just a single swing. And it is at this point that the Barlgura realizes that if it does stay toe-to-toe with the Brontosaurus, it could be in serious trouble. And while it has some advantages to utilize, it is going to absolutely do what it can to secure a victory. And that does mean that it is going to be dropping in with its second use of invisibility as it disappears from the Brontosaurus's eye line. And it then will be using 30 feet of its movement to move away from the gargantuan beast in front of it. Of course, then activating that bonus action to utilize its leap, costing its final 10 feet of movement in order to jump an additional 40 feet away from the dinosaur. And as it leaves the Brontosaurus's range, often an opportunity attack would follow. However, as the Barlgura is invisible and an opportunity attack does rely on a creature being able to see the creature that it wants to target, Demon will be able to get out of there without so much as a scratch. And that does mean we will be handing over to the Brontosaurus's turn, but once again will bellow into the air, seeking out the location of its chaotic opponent, and it will do the best it can to follow the Barlgura to the opposite side of the arena, where it will look to swish and swat its tail in an attempt to target the creature, although the Barlgura is far too far away at this point in time, the Brontosaurus having used almost all of its 30 feet of movement to just get over to the wall, where it does look to be seeking and searching for the Barlgura. The Brontosaurus, of course, once again going to hold an action to strike out at the Barlgura should it reveal itself from invisibility once more. And once again we will hand back over to the abyssal monster. The Barlgura is going to do exactly what it's done before, hopefully this time dealing enough damage to put the Brontosaurus out of its misery. We'll be utilizing its full score of movements here to get back into melee combat with the Brontosaurus. The Barlgura itself having the benefit of a 40-foot movement speed, of which it does also have climb, and of course that bonus action leap does grant it a 40-foot jump by spending 10 feet of movement. So quite the distance this creature can move, and we are being treated to a blinding display of speed in the arena tonight. The Barlgura does indeed get back into melee range with the Brontosaurus, where it will be unleashing that tormenting bite once again. The invisibility condition, of course, granting it advantage on this roll. So Barlgura rolling in right here. Plus 7 to hit, looking to beat that AC of 15, all on advantage. And that is a decent roll again from the Barlgura there with a 12 plus 7 for 19, making sure that it connects once more. Teeth gnashing, chomping, and biting through the Brontosaurus's hide as if it were nothing more than the most excellently cooked of steaks. And that does, of course, mean that another 2d6 plus 4 points of piercing damage plus 2d12 points of psychic damage will be brought down upon the Brontosaurus. Let's see what the Barlgura is capable of. And that is an equally terrible roll as before. Although, once again, it is saved by a 9 on the d12, with those two 2s coming together to make for 4, plus 1 for 5, topped up by that 9 right there to make for 14 points of damage. Although, once again, that will be topped up by the 4-point modifier to make for 18 points of damage, which is a far cry from its potential output, but is still going to drop the Brontosaurus from 56 to 38 hit points. And once again, the Barlgura will be throwing in with 2 more thrash attacks, although as before, these will now be rolling in straight, as it no longer has the benefit from its invisibility condition. So roll 1 coming in, and that is going to be a 16 plus 7 for 23, which is a surefire hit once again, as the Barlgura rolls in with 1d10 plus 4 points of bludgeoning damage. And that is going to be a very sturdy 6 there, plus 4 to make for 10. A decent connection, which will drop the Brontosaurus down to 28 hit points as it rolls in once more. Can it do the triple and secure yet another critical hit from this thrash attack? Oh, not quite, but it can roll in with an 11 plus 7 for 18, which does mean that this second strike cuts through the Brontosaurus's defenses as well, as it rolls in with yet another 1d10 plus 4 points of bludgeoning damage. And that is another 5 there. Very respectable roll, coming in at the midway point, plus that 4-point modifier to total for 9 points of damage, which will be dropping the Brontosaurus down to just 19 hit points. And the Barlgura, having exhausted all of its movement, all of its abilities, will need to remain where it stands in toe-to-toe combat with the gargantuan dinosaur, which now casts a mighty shadow over its opponent as it prepares to weigh in with yet another tail attack. And that is exactly what the primordial dinosaur is going to do right here. The Barlgura braces itself for impact as the tail swings in. But that, of course, is the reaction attack from the Brontosaurus, and the Brontosaurus is going to utilize that reaction as previously mentioned, which it was holding for when the Barlgura popped out from that invisibility. Plus 8 to hit, looking to beat an AC of 15. But the Brontosaurus rolls in with a natural 1. That is not what it wanted at all, and the Barlgura has clearly made some kind of mark on this monster. Perhaps it goes so far back to that initial psychic blast from the Phantasmal Killer, which may have done more damage to scramble the Brontosaurus's brain than we previously thought. And it does look like the Titan has missed this attack, but it has made quite a dent in the floor of the arena, which we will need to patch out later. And now, as we roll over to the Brontosaurus's full turn, it does have a second opportunity here to hit the Barlgura as it swings in once again with that tail attack. For me once, shame on you. For me twice, shame on me. Can the tail attack catch the Barlgura out for a second time as it swings back upon itself? Rolling in right here. Let's see if the Brontosaurus can redeem itself on this second attack. And that is a 2, which is not much better than a natural 1 as the Barlgura dodges out of the way of that tail attack. It's plus 8 modifier, only bringing it up to a 10, which does mean that the Brontosaurus has whiffed this attack as well. Such disappointment from the dinosaur as its tail simply fails to connect with the demon standing next to it. And that does mean that we will be handing back over to the Barlgura, which is in a state of panic at the moment as it knows that should one of those strikes connect, it could all be completely over for it, and it knows that it has to dig deep and finish the job that it started this round, and therefore remaining where it stands. The Barlgura will be rolling in right here, plus 7 to hit with its tormenting bite. This will be an AC of 15. And with an 11 plus 7 for 18, that will do the job indeed, as it now will be dealing an additional 2d6 plus 4 points of piercing damage, plus 2d12 points of psychic damage to the dinosaur. Can the Barlgura go the distance with this attack here? Let's find out. And again, it's not been rolling the best on these tormenting bites, although a 5 and a 6 will make for 11, plus 2 for 13, topped up by the 3 there to make for 16 points of damage, which will be topped up by the 4-point modifier to make for 20 points of damage, which will just by a hair be enough to bring the Brontosaurus down to 0 hit points. The Barlgura finding a weak spot on the Brontosaurus's soft underbelly, ripping it to pieces as its guts spill onto the arena floor below, staining the ground with enough blood to fill several of the hot tubs that circle the arena. And with a final bellow, the Titan falls, a thud, crashing down onto the floor of the arena as the Barlgura does its best to get out of there as quickly as possible to avoid becoming a second-hand casualty. And after a disappointing performance from the Brontosaurus, I'm not sure we could expect much else from it here, but the Barlgura did perform, going above and beyond, utilizing a slew of abilities in order to achieve victory today. As the demon, the Barlgura from the abyss does secure victory in this quarter-final battle, which will see it rise up into the semi-final rounds, where it will be taking on the Flesh Golem in what we can only consider a highly anticipated semi-final bout, as we do bid farewell to the Brontosaurus, the fallen giant, which will be going no further in the tournament. But with all that being said, I do hope you will join me again next time when another incredibly exciting brawl takes place, as what could be one of my personal favourite combats unfolds, as the hill giant takes on the barbed devil in what could be a tumultuous and fiery combat indeed. And of course, if you did enjoy what you saw here today, please consider dropping a like on the video, commenting down below, and subscribing to the channel, as well as utilizing YouTube's new hype feature, as every interaction helps spread these videos out to more and more people, which would be greatly appreciated. And as always, thank you once again very, very much for watching, and I will see you in another video very soon.